Hey, you guys, gals, and bums, and welcome back to A Few Bad Men. Today, we have the finale of the Castellamarese War Series, Episode 5, Capo, Tutti, Capi. So make sure you do all of that YouTube stuff, thumbs, bells, smack that subscribe button around if you haven't already. All right? So, without further ado, let's get right into this. The Castellamarese War, Part 5, Capo, Tutti, Capi. When Salvatore Maranzano came to the U.S., he was 49 years old. He was already an established mafioso back in his hometown of Castellamarese del Golfo. It only took him 8 months to get arrested in his new country. He was arrested in 1925 in New York for possession of a pistol, but he had a permit to carry given to him by a judge in Buffalo, where he said he was living at the time. Probably with the community of the Castellamarese run by Stefano Magaddino already in America for a few years. The judge who presided over the case made a statement to the papers saying how appalled he was by the ease at which criminals acquired gun permits from judges. The fact that men like Maranzano, who was not even a citizen and had no right to a gun, were able to carry guns with impunity was disturbing. Maranzano didn't take long to make himself a presence in the New York underworld. During Prohibition, he had up to 500 stills running in the upstate New York area that he used to supply Brooklyn speakeasies. He also had a smuggling operation where he supplied illegal immigrants with counterfeit paperwork for a fee. He would require the immigrants to pay him back with interest weekly. Most would never be able to pay the principal and would be in his debt forever. He also was bringing in heroin, and he handled all this business from an office on Park Avenue. By the summer of 1931, he was the biggest gangster in America. He was the victor in the biggest gang war at the time, and his adversary Joe Masseria was in a hole in the Calvary Cemetery in Woodside, Queens County. There were 5 Italian gangs in New York, and he was the boss of all of them. But heavy is the head, and Maranzano was distrustful of non-Castellamarese, and especially did not trust his newly named underboss, Charlie Lucky. He had every right to be leery. Charlie had betrayed his former boss, had him killed, and joined with him. Charlie was young and ambitious. He wasn't raised in the old country. He was American. Maranzano hated the fact that some of Charlie's partners were non-Sicilians like Frank Costello and Vito Genovese. And even worse, some of them were Jews like Meyer Lansky and Ben Siegel. Another non-Sicilian in Chicago named Al Capone was another man that he did not trust. Maranzano began to feel that it might be better if these men no longer drew breath. He could kill them and replace them with men loyal to him like Joe the Boss did. Unfortunate for him, Charlie Lucky was several steps ahead of him. It was Charlie's plan to remove Masseria and Maranzano all along and take over with the younger, more progressive gangsters who didn't care where you came from as long as you could make a buck together. Although Maranzano was boss, Charlie Lucky had friends in key positions within Maranzano's organization. Tommy Gagliano and Tommy Lucchese were longtime allies. One of the big men in the Scalise organization was a man who literally owed his life to Charlie and would kill anyone for him, Albert Anastasia. And if it came down to another war, Charlie could depend on support from the Bug and Meyer gang, Dutch Schultz and his Bronx Harlem gang, Al Capone from Chicago, Longy Zwillman of New Jersey, Santo Trafficante from Florida, Mo Dalitz and his gang from Cleveland, and a crew of Jewish killers from Detroit called the Purple Gang. Charlie had a meeting in Cleveland where they discussed the removal of Maranzano. After the meet, the gangsters celebrated by going to the fights. Just as the fights were beginning, several policemen came down the aisle and surrounded them. Charlie and his companions were taken in and held on suspicion overnight. When questioned in the morning, they told the cops that they were in town for the fights and were let go in order to leave town immediately. Word got back to Maranzano, and he called Charlie to his office. He asked what the hell was going on in Cleveland, and Charlie told Maranzano the same story he told the cops. Maranzano accepted the answer, but his suspicions were aroused. Maranzano made a list of all the men he would need to kill in order to remain Capo di Tutti Capi. On that list were Charlie Lucky, Vito Genovese, Albert Anastasia, Meyer Lansky, Dutch Schultz, and Al Capone. Charlie got word from somebody in Maranzano's organization that Maranzano planned to have him and Vito killed. The plan was to lure them to his office where Vincent Cole would be waiting to kill him. All right, now time out. I gotta call BS on this. Why would you have two men killed in your office on Park Avenue? That's not the place where you want to commit a murder, especially your enemies in your office. That's ridiculous. So I call BS on that. All right. So I think this makes no sense, and I think it's more legend than fact. All right. Either way, Charlie decided that he had to strike now. But how to get Maranzano? He traveled in a bulletproof car with a shotgun, and his office on Park Avenue was in a very busy place and not the best place to commit murder. They needed a plan. Tommy Lucchese was working in Maranzano's office as a worker/bodyguard. That Maranzano's office had recently been raided by the feds, and Maranzano had instructed his men not to be armed while at the office. So, no matter how busy Park Avenue was, this was their best chance to kill a Maranzano. Someone came up with the idea of dressing up as feds and getting him alone in his office and dispatching him with knives instead of guns so as not to draw attention. They had the plan. Now all they needed was the right men to pull it off. They couldn't be Italian because that would be a red flag for Maranzano. Up to 5 men were chosen for the task, depending on the source. But only 2 names come down to us through history. One was a lifelong friend of Charlie and Maya, and he was one of the killers in the Bug and Maya gang, a devout Jew named Samuel Red Levine. I did a video on Red a few months back, so go check that out if you haven't seen it already. All right. The other one was another Jew on loan from Dutch Schultz's mob, Abe Bo Weinberg. He was Dutch's muscle along with his brother George. The other 3, we can only speculate. There were so many Jewish killers in New York at that time, and they all seemed to know each other and they had somewhat of their own national syndicate going on alongside the Italians. But we'll get to that later. So here's my theory. I believe that because at this time, Dutch was at war with Vince Cole, and he had an army of Jewish gangsters around him, including Pretty Ann Burton and Red Levine. Pretty was a partner of Red Levine in Brooklyn and a psychopath himself. I believe that he could have been one of the men, but that's just me speculating. All right. Let me know what you think. Let me know who you think it was in the comments. All right. Legend has it that on September 9th, 1931, Salvatore Maranzano summoned Charlie and Vito to his office. The next day on September 10th, 1931, sometime in the afternoon, 3 to 5 men burst into Maranzano's office and announced themselves as federal agents. Present at the time were Bobby Doyle Santucci, the man who put the slugs in Joe Pinzolo, Maranzano's stenographer, and a half dozen illegal Italian immigrants. The fake G-men told everyone to line up on the wall, including Maranzano, who came out to see what was going on. He too was lined up, but after a nod from Santucci, or maybe some say Lucchese, letting the killers know that he was the mark, they took Maranzano back into his office, and then one of the men suddenly began to twist Maranzano's arm behind his back, while another one stabbed him and slashed his throat. Maranzano was able to break the hold of his killers, but before he could grab something to defend himself with, shots rang out. Maranzano was hit several times and collapsed on the floor of his office. The history books will tell you that as the killers made their way down the stairs to make their escape, they bumped into Vincent Cole on his way up to see Maranzano and killed Charlie and Vito. But I call BS on this too. See, Cole was at war with Dutch, and I don't think that his gunmen, Bo Weinberg in particular, would have said anything to Cole. I think if they saw each other, there would have been another killing, a shootout right there. So I call BS on that. Bobby Doyle Santucci was caught by the police as he was leaving the office. He was questioned and let go. Over the next few days, 3 more men were brought into questioning. One man named James F. Alaskir. He told police that he was present when Maranzano got it, but he was in an adjoining office and did not witness the shooting. The death of Salvatore Maranzano left Charlie Lucky as the most powerful gangster in America, the new Capo de Tutti Capi. But Charlie didn't need no titles. There were no big meetings of gangsters from around the country to proclaim Charlie as the new boss of bosses. Charlie went around the country meeting face to face with the bosses and explaining to them there would be no Capo de Tutti Capi. There was going to be a national syndicate run by a board of directors called the Commission. Each of the major gangs would be represented. The commission was designed to bring peace to the underworld and resolve conflicts democratically, sort of like the UN. From now on, if you had a beef with another gangster, you couldn't just kill him. You had to bring your case to the commission, and it would be voted on. If you lost your case and killed the guy anyway, you were next. Charlie was not the boss of bosses, but he was considered the first amongst equals. He did make a few changes to the organization that Maranzano had put in place. First, he removed Frank Scalise from leadership of the former Mineo gang and gave it to Vincent Mangano. Scalise had been too close to Maranzano. The promotion of Mangano, to me, seems like a reward for his help in the elimination of Joe Masseria. Charlie also appointed Albert Anastasia as Mangano's underboss. In his own family, Charlie named Vito Genovese as his underboss and Maya Lansky as his consigliere, or counselor. Joe Bonanno became the head of the Castellamarese clan. Charlie also did away with the title of Capo de Tutti Capi. Charlie wanted to curb the killings in the underworld. They brought too much heat from the cops and made it hard to conduct business. But this was the underworld, and sometimes a guy needed to be whacked. So an enforcement group was needed to carry out executions sanctioned by the commission. They chose a crew of Jewish and Italian gangsters from Brownsville and Ocean Hill, Brooklyn, led by Abraham Rellis, a delinquent who had been getting arrested since he was 15 and had recently won his own war against big bosses of his own neighborhood. They would be given a retainer and control over their neighborhood without interference from the commission, in exchange for killing the people who the commission said needed to be killed. He placed Albert Anastasia in charge of the crew. Now, I know I said before in the Lepke video, and I know you're going to say it now, but what about Lepke? I thought he was boss of Murder Incorporated. Well, Lepke was not the head of Murder Incorporated. He was a member of the commission and had access to the team. And he was the number one patron of the crew when he was trying to eliminate witnesses against him in the mid-30s. And Abe Rellis helped him hide while he was on the run, which gave the appearance of him being a boss. Lepke was a boss in his own right. He had his own team of killers, Jewish gangsters, who, like I said, all knew each other and were intertwined. Guys like Mendy Weiss and Charlie the Bug and Ali Tic-Tac Tannenbaum all worked for Lepke. Look, the Dutch Schultz murder gets lumped in with Murder Incorporated, but Weiss and Workman were Lepke killers. They did that. They killed Dutch. Like I said, Lepke was a legitimate boss in his own right. Albert Anastasia took contracts from the commission, not just Lepke. So, getting back to the commission. The commission later became an Italian thing, but it started off multiracial. Like I said, Lepke was on the original commission along with Lansky and Dutch Schultz, who may not have been a full commission member, but he had some pull. Jewish gangsters were very powerful at this time, but the Italian gangs were bigger. These were the last generation of Jewish gangsters. Unlike the Italian gangsters whose tradition went back to the old country, the Jewish gangster made his money and moved his family out of their neighborhoods, put them into good schools, and out of the gangster life. All right. So Chicago also had a seat on the commission, but Al Capone would not be able to sit on it. He was about to do a stretch for income tax evasion. The Jewish gangsters of Cleveland and Detroit were also represented, as well as Santo Trafficante in Florida. There were still a few loose ends that needed to be tied up, literally. One of those loose ends was Sam Palacia. He was one of the men who left his coat at Scarpato's restaurant when Joe the Boss was bumped off. He had somehow fallen into the bad graces of Vito Genovese. Vito had no time for any commission, and if he wanted somebody dead, they were going to die. In 1932, Vito took Palacia with him on a trip to Chicago for some business. On the way, they stopped in Pittsburgh and met with John Bazzano, the Pittsburgh boss. According to Nick Gentile, Genovese told Bazzano that he was going to get Paul Rica to bump Palacia off in Chicago. However it happened, Palacia never returned from his Chicago trip, and he was never seen again. As for Gerardo Scarpato, the owner of the restaurant where Joe was bumped off, he returned to the U.S. from Italy in June of 1932. So here's a cool thing that I found out in the papers. In the last episode, I said there was a man who Scarpato told to leave the restaurant after talking to Anthony Carfagno in the morning that Joe the Boss got his. All right. Well, his name was Dominic Petito. Petito may have also been the last man to see Gerardo Scarpato alive. He told the police that he met with Scarpato to give him some money at the corner of 4th Avenue and Union Street. He said Scarpato left and promised to return. A while later, Anthony Carfagno approached him and said, "Listen, No matter what happens, you never knew Scarpato. Get the hell out of here and keep your mouth shut. Gerardo Scarpato's body was found on September 12, 1932. He had been knocked unconscious and then trussed up like a roasting fowl, according to the Times-Union. A rope had been tied around his neck and his knees, and he was placed into a burlap sack, so when he came to, if he came to, he would strangle himself to death trying to get free. He was found in a black sedan parked in Brooklyn. Now, all my aficionados, whose MO is this? All right, tied up, put in a burlap sack, left in a stolen car. This is Murder Inc.'s MO, without the ice picking. This could be one of the first hits performed by the Rellis Mob, as they were known in the papers. I will put money on that this is Abe and Pittsburgh Phil who did this. At least those two. I searched victims killed in this fashion in Brooklyn in the 30s, and the number's amazing. And Abe Rellis and Pittsburgh Phil were brought in by the police on a lot of these murders. All right. Dominic Petito was brought in for questioning, but he was released due to lack of evidence. Scarpato was buried in a gangster fashion with a $3,000 bronze coffin. So apparently, he wasn't just a restaurant owner. All right. And there we have it. This is the story of the birth of the modern Cosa Nostra, the beginning of the golden age, so to say. Prohibition that taught these street hoods how to be CEOs, and they used that knowledge along with the threats of violence to go on to have their hands on the throats of American citizens for decades. They infiltrated legitimate businesses, and the cost was passed on to the consumer. They corrupted politicians and decided who would be mayor or judge in small smoke-filled rooms. They were the people who knew what the people wanted. A lot of the things they made money off are now legal, and the government took over the rackets. You got legal bookmaking. You got state-run lotteries, or the numbers. Liquor is legal, and some formerly illegal drugs are now legal. And I'm not trying to get political on this, just so you understand. I'm just stating the facts here, all right? So before abortion became legal, the mob ran illegal abortion clinics. Anything that you wanted that was illegal, you could get from the mob. All right. So I think that's about it. If there's anything I left out, leave it in the comments. All right. I'll be doing some more follow-up videos on this. I'll be doing what the paper said about this and everything. So as of the time that I'm doing this recording, I have not counted the votes for the next video. I'm going to give it a few more days. Also, I'm going to be trying to put at least one more video up a week. I need to get the content back up. I lost a lot of videos in that pinch. So there won't be serious stuff like this, just random gangster stuff I found in the papers. So make sure that you put that subscribe button on the spot. All right. Some of you ain't made your bones yet. What's the matter with you? All right. You want to get the skin, you got to hit that subscribe button. You got to whack him and make your bones. Make sure you hit that bell so you don't miss nothing. Like I said, I'll be dropping more stuff, so you don't want to miss that. The merch store is still up. The link is in the description. If you want to kick a few bucks up to the boss so the operation can run smooth, the link is down below. Thanks to all the people who have donated. I don't have the list in front of me right now, but you know who you are, and I thank you so much. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed the story as much as I enjoyed telling it. This has been A Few Bad Men. Keep your nose clean and don't take any wooden nickels. I'll see you in the funnies.